They could be a whistleblower. And if you thought of nothing, you're the
You're the
whistleblower.
whistleblower. I like that a lot. I'm going to use that, by the way. So, Talia, give us a clap, just for argument's sake.
Nice.
That wasn't enough.
That was like a gator.
Just so we're clear. There
Okay.
you go. Because that's how we line up the audio and the video. It needs to be a high register, otherwise you're not going to see it. Here we are for the second episode of Industry Vitals. We didn't learn from any of our mistakes on the first one, so we're doing another one.
There we go.
I guess is the way to look at this. I don't want to take any more credit for this podcast than I should, and I want to give the opportunity to Brian to... Brian, see, I did it already.
Wait, hold on.
Brian was our last guest. No, it's okay. We're going to leave that in. Brian, we love you.
Send that to Brian. He will love the fact
He
that...
will.
I don't know if he'll love or you may get a cease and desist.
Yeah,
if
probably.
you sit there and you go,
Probably.
they called Brie.
This is where it all gets interesting because we do have a compliance officer in our midst today. So Mitchell, if you don't mind introducing yourself, that would be lovely. And we're really, I should say before we start, we're very appreciative of you taking the time to meet with us today. So, and you can have him back anytime because a man with his style, I am all for on this podcast.
Definitely.
So this is one of those moments where then everybody goes, everybody sees this
Correct.
from the waist
We're
up.
going to have to show the shoes before.
What kind of style are we talking
The
about?
shoes will be in the outtakes.
The shoes,
I'm
they
sure.
have, right, they'll be in the blooper reel.
Mm-hmm.
Understood.
I assure you.
And at the same way, obviously, thank you, Debbie. I've known Debbie for many, many years, and obviously have known SAX and all the things that you have done in the industry. We obviously have clients
Many clients.
together.
Right?
But what's interesting is, and that's one of the interesting things, and I guess we'll talk a little bit about in healthcare, is you're always overlapping. It is what do they used to say? What, keep your friends close and your enemies
it's the
closer?
truth, man. That's
Still true, huh?
It is. It's never
And
not
every
true.
time
Double
we get
negative.
together, it just seems like the circle's smaller, right?
It
we can
is.
all talk about, we try not to mention names, and before you know it, we're all working with
Absolutely.
the same practices.
Well, even more humorous is the fact that we're all sitting this close to each other right now, because you go back and we'll talk a little bit about probably the wonderful world of COVID and the public health emergency. But I was just at a funeral of last week or a week and a half ago of my mother's one of the closest friends, and we talk about how we can sit this close. But we were outside at a funeral in Valhalla, New York, and there was a woman outside at the funeral wearing a mask.
A mask, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I actually saw someone in a car
They still do it.
wearing a mask,
They still do it.
smoking a cigar with the windows up. And I'm like, he needs, and it was, by the way, it was a Chevy Spark.
Wait a second.
So
That's like a cheat code, right? It's like you don't have to smell your own cigar. You smoke the cigar with the mask
With the
on.
man, no, he's got a hole in the, and I said, and I'm
No
like,
way.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a cheat code.
I was like, have you seen Silence of the Lambs?
oh man, that is so cool.
It's very true.
That guy is way ahead of his time. Anyway,
But yeah, so
Mitchell, your introduction.
thank you so much. So my name is Mitchell Brie. I'm the CEO and founder of Empower Healthcare and Compliance Partners. We're a nationwide compliance and risk firm.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about why I say risk. I've been in healthcare for almost 30 years now.
Okay.
My background was in, of course, anti-healthcare, which would be...
You started at 10, I take it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you were 10 years old
10
when you
years
started,
old.
yeah.
Gonna be 50.
I was 5.
Gonna be 50. Yeah, I'm gonna be 53. But started out in theater.
Okay.
Graduated with a degree from Ithaca College, and
Ithaca
certainly
is gorgeous.
Oh wow! I always tell a story when I do a
I
lot
love
of public
that t-shirt.
speaking. Is the T-shirt is great, and the two stories I could say when you go to age yourself is that one, if you don't know the Finger Lakes regions and all those Cayuga Falls, so all the guys are playing ultimate frisbee because
big up
that
there.
was a
Very
cool
big
sport.
up there, yeah.
It was a cool sport back then. Now they do it. Dogs catch it, right?
Yep.
So there were a bunch of people, just refer to them as people, that were all sitting there watching. And as freshman boys, we're sitting there all trying to impress, whatever it is. So I'm running, and I go to catch the frisbee, and I ran right off the cliff.
Oh no!
It was water. I was fine.
No.
And then my third night, it was 1989. It was me and my college roommate, and then we played together too. But my college roommate said, "Let's go see this new band at this place in Ithaca called The Haunt." And we went, and the next thing you know, we're like, wow, this band's really good. 1989. And 3 months later, we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, we're like, I've heard that song. It was on the radio. It was Pearl Jam.
No,
So they were just, it was like before they were famous.
I didn't want to release, but I've heard, I knew they were the Haunt prior.
They were, yes.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to get
so
the
So we were
punchline.
going there. That was the punchline. No, started in healthcare. I certainly did a lot of public speaking. I do attribute a lot of that to my background. Back when we were all growing up, not you, back when we were all growing up, getting in front of a group of people was a business.
Yeah.
So they used to have, I didn't do it, but I helped speak, and they had this thing called Toastmasters.
Yes.
Do you remember Toastmasters? So Toastmasters was like this group where you would go.
Yeah.
It was like a 12-step program for people who had never been able to go up publicly. And it was a huge business. They had that and this other place called the New School, where you would go and do public speaking. And I was fairly comfortable. I don't know if I would say I was good at it, but I was comfortable getting up in front of a group. And then from there, just had dealt with some situations in my life, as we all do as we get older in the healthcare world, and really kind of just took a liking to the more of the backside, so the patient-centric side
Sure.
of healthcare. And then started working for a couple software companies, a company called Greenway Medical Technologies, WebMD, small company, WebMD.
Yeah.
And
Responsible for many a sleepless night for me. Thank you.
absolutely. Well, the joke was, and then those companies start merging.
Yeah.
And then started my own firm back in 2013. And then this most recent organization that we started was probably about 3 years ago.
Cool.
And we'll get into a little bit more of that. But really the purpose of that was to be able to focus on the other side, audit defense, and the idea of risk.
Sure.
And because, well, everything's kind of a risk. But we are a nationwide company. I'm based out of Bergen County, New Jersey. We have employees in probably about 8 or 9 different states. And then, as we were talking before, I've been on a really long road tour, where it's primarily I'm speaking to 2 types. So I'm either talking to the administrators
Yep.
and the billers. They're usually the same person, so we do have this ongoing joke when we say, "Are there any doctors in the room?" And it goes, it's silent.
Yeah.
And then I just go, "Yes," whatever. And I go, "Okay, so here's the administrator, who here's the compliance officer, who here's HR." I just keep your hands up. Just keep your hands up, and you just keep going and going and going because it's all the same person historically, which, by the way, is non-compliant. And then we talk about the idea of how risk went wrong. And then, so we'll talk more on the audit defense, M&A, mergers and acquisitions side of it.
Sure.
And a whole bunch of other fun stuff. But as my speech is called, which I know we talked about before, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that goes for anything, but it's real big in healthcare right now. So I'm excited.
Immortalized by Jeff Goldblum.
But not from The Fly.
No.
Or The Fly 2.
By the way, I love The Fly.
Earth Girl's Reason. There's a whole bunch of early movies we could do that on.
I can't tell you how many times I use his line from Jurassic Park. Right, especially in my professional career, it comes up
Finds a
so
way.
often.
Finds a way.
That one too. Like those 2 lines are immeasurably valuable. I find in my professional career. So sorry, Debbie. We can go off topic
I
very
was just
quickly.
going to ask you a question now.
Yeah, no,
So
of
on
course.
the defense side,
Yes.
is it Medicare coming in or Medicaid and clawing back? Is that the type of defense? Like what type of?
So you have two different
Claims.
worlds, and it's an excellent question. And as I always like to say, the difference between an excellent question and a good question is if it's an excellent question, I have an answer for it, and if I don't know, it's a good question.
I like that.
So you have 2 different worlds. You have government insurance, and then you have commercial insurance. So if you're in a hospital setting, usually the thought process is if it's a commercial audit, you guys figure it out. If it's a government audit, we need to know about it. And that's for a lot of reasons. That's for exclusion checking and exclusion lists, which are vitally important in today's world. But yeah, so you're definitely seeing a lot of clawback on the government side. A lot of the calls that we're getting right now are either for Horizon or the government. Like it's
Right.
like Horizon was like, woohoo, let's go. Nothing. I have Horizon. I pay my bill on time every
Good
month.
caveat. Good
Caveat. Just thank you. A lot of that also has to deal with the COVID reclaws.
Right.
So
I'm
you know,
dealing with some of those right
yeah.
now.
So I mean, the idea with COVID was, here's what they told you, which is put yourself in harm's way, see the patient, don't worry about it, don't worry about the telehealth, don't worry about anything, we'll pay you. And where we are now is, where were you during that telehealth visit?
So going through the charts and the notes.
So now they're auditing everybody because they
Right.
forgot all about
Right.
that. So once again, we talk about just because you can doesn't mean you should. Well, there are certain areas where we're going to go, oh, I think we should push back on that. But yeah, so you're definitely seeing a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse, a lot of improper billing. You're seeing a lot of it, oddly enough, in the dental space all of a sudden.
Interesting.
So dental has picked up huge audits. We're doing more in that audit, also the behavioral health and telehealth is a huge space right now in regards to billing, a lot of whistleblowing type of scenario where we always talk about the whistleblowers. They go, oh, there was an unhappy patient. It's almost never an unhappy patient. It's almost always an unhappy employee. So we always talk about the idea of making sure that we're listening to what we're being told. But once again, we have a bunch of more of the Medicare. There is some Medicaid. New Jersey is also a very different state if we're talking New Jersey specific because of DOBI, the Department of Banking, where if you have a billing company, you actually need a license. And some states, they may not ask for that, but when we go into revenue cycle companies, because we believe a lot in what we call billing policies and procedures, the first question we ask is, can we see your DOBI license? And some people will be like, what?
And I was just speaking with an attorney, and he was saying that the Adobe issue is becoming more of a problem
Oh, yeah.
as of recent. Like that's what's really very restrictive, and the penalties are coming through.
They are, and what made it really interesting, and I've had a great relationship with the people that I've dealt with over at Adobe, but where a lot of the problems lie were that during COVID they shut down and they weren't opening their mail.
Oh yeah.
As most people were.
Yep.
So you would send in, to get a license, or some people would just go, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like Adobe? Like Adobe?
Right.
One person actually was like, I downloaded that already, and I was like,
Nice. Okay.
for $29.99. But yeah, so there is definitely the clawbacks are more governmental, and then from the rest of it you are seeing a lot of Horizon right now as the other piece, which is kind of coming in and saying, hey, we want to look under the hood, or we want to from that piece.
So are you finding that once they come in and there's an issue and you remediate it, are they coming back a year later, or are they letting them be, the practice?
So that is a beyond excellent question, and the reason is because one of the things that we talk about, and I think this is probably not just me. I think this is like an industry compliance or a risk standard, is that it's easy to become compliant. If it wasn't easy to become compliant, Stericycle wouldn't be selling HIPAA programs.
Yeah.
Nothing against Stericycle, but you can go online right now and get a template. You can get it from Paychex. That's like, I tell the story of, it's like if I was if you were shopping at Stop and Shop or King's or whatever, Wawa or Wegmans, whatever it was, and I was the checkout person. If you were lucky enough to get a checkout person, because they're trying to get rid of that. But, and I said, oh, it's $174. And you give me your credit card, and I go, would you like me to pay your water bill too? And you'd be like, wait, what? Well, I can pay your water bill too. Well, why? Because I can. It's a service that we offer now. And you're giving me a look like, why would I let Paychex do my compliance?
Right.
Why would I let Stericycle do my compliance? They're not compliance companies.
Right.
Those are templates. So when we look at templates, it's the same argument you get into with physicians with what they call cloning, where they're taking templates and they're cutting and pasting them, and there's
Wow.
no difference. But so it's easy to become compliant. It's impossible to stay compliant.
Yeah.
And we talk about when something breaks down in a practice, it's never because the gear breaks. It's because there's a little tiny pebble
Right.
that kind of gets
It's wedged
lodged
in.
in there,
Yeah.
and you have to go find it. So they go, well, give me an example of someone falling out of compliance once they're compliant. You could just go, okay, you hire anybody new? Yeah, good, non-compliant. You fire anybody?
Yep.
Yeah, good, non-compliant. Hey,
Yeah.
did you get a new coffee machine? Yeah, good, non-compliant. You can keep going through it because anything that uses electricity, anything that you use an IT company for, you name it, it will throw you out of compliance. Getting back to your statement, is you have a lot of practices that will say, ooh, I got a letter from the government, we'll just say that. And it says, by May 1st, I need 17 pieces of information on these 19
Charts.
charts.
Right.
So let's play a game here. 17 and 19, so 19 pages. So how much information should we send? I'm going to send all of it because I want to prove a point. And I'm going to send 500 pieces. And I'm not going to do 19 patients. I'm going to do all the patients. And you sit there and you go, whoa. You send exactly what you are asked for.
Yep.
You don't send more. You don't send less. If they say it's May 1st, don't send it on May 2nd to prove a point. You send it on May 1st. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have the right to reverse audit them.
Right.
Because the question then becomes, well, why are you auditing me? No one asks that question. Well, I got it, so I have to reply. Really? I'm not sure if that's always true. But if you get audited and then you give them everything and you have this false sense of, well, I'm good.
Security.
You're not good.
Yeah.
So we, and I tried to make this as educated, not talking just about us, but our company, we created a corrective action plan or a corrective monitoring plan where it goes for 24 months, and for 12 months you should always be auditing yourself quarterly. You should be able, and it helps with the insurance companies in a favorable way if you can actually go and say, by the way, we negotiated, we paid our fine, or we successfully won, but we are aware that mistakes were made. So here's what we're going to do going forward. We now have a corrective action plan with monitoring, which goes for 12 months, and we'll go, oh, okay. That way, when you go, say, well, here it is. Here's what we did. But you do this whole thing of once I get out of it, I'm out. And that's not how it works.
So let me ask you, and this is about you. We're talking about your business and obviously the value that you can provide. How widespread is the problem? Right? Like,
well, it's bigger than this room.
Well, that's my argument, right? Like, how the examples you're giving, I can think of, and I'm not saying this around our clients specifically, just based on my time in the industry. And my caveat is I came from the world of IT. You mentioned technology, and I sold a lot of technology into the healthcare industry, and it happens very quickly and very often. And the change on the technology side is rampant, if we're being honest. And to your point, they're probably out of compliance with every purchase they make. How widespread is that issue, right? I mean, there's only one of you. So you can't educate the whole country in one fell swoop. What's being done to educate?
Well, I'm hiring more people. No, no. So it's interesting because for when I started this company, it was really, our chief operating officer, who's fabulous. Her name is Lorraine Ludwigsen, and when we. When this idea came up of going ahead and doing this, actually the goal was I'm just going to be frighteningly the face of the company. And it was only because I wore clothes and glasses and shoes like I do, and people always go, well, why do you dress like that? And my response was, I don't care, because you can't, there are certain things you go, like my daughter, I have a 13 and 11-year-old daughter, and one of them was like, there's no way you're going to shout out us on this thing. I was like, oh, yes, I am. And my kids are like my fashionistas. Like, they'll be like, Dad. And then, Dad. And then my younger daughter will go, well, that goes with nothing, so I guess it goes with everything. So I'm the face where I basically just go around the country and do education. Because it's hard to sell compliance.
It is. It is, very much so.
Compliance is found. You either agree or disagree, and usually you go, or what they usually say is, There's proactive and reactive compliance.
Well, I was going to say it becomes
Yeah.
more urgent once
Yeah.
they receive the notice in the mail.
Sure.
Yeah, so they was right, exactly,
Right.
Debbie. So when they go proactive compliance, the simplest way of doing it is going, I know somebody that got in trouble. You know, I want to make sure I have HIPAA and OSHA, and when I say HIPAA, I want to make sure I have HIPAA. I go 2 P's or 2 A's. And then you see the look of fear go on their face because they don't know.
Yeah.
And you go through all of those things and say, okay, well, we want to make sure that you stay compliant. And then you have reactive compliance, which is the feds are in my lobby. You know,
Right.
that was always kind of the joke as
Right.
to, and where that started from. And then, well, I'll answer your question first, and then I'll kind of go off
Sure.
base for a second because you said I could. Yeah, there's only one of me, but how widespread is the problem? The whole system.
Yeah.
And we talk about things like MIPS or the Merit Incentive Payment System, where every single year, you know, there's an extreme and unusual category of how to get out of these things. And they were so excited when May 11th hit and COVID ended.
Yeah.
And then Change Healthcare was like, we're going to get you. You know, we're going to do this huge cyber attack. So there they go, because the government's broke.
Yeah.
I mean, healthcare's broke. So they keep finding ways, and that was the whole thing with MIPS was, oh, well, you can get up to an X% bonus, or you can get penalized. And I always tell people, what's the difference in those two sentences? They say, I can get up to, or I will get penalized. But you don't get a bonus unless there's a penalty.
Got it.
So let's think about that.
Makes
for a
perfect
second.
sense.
So from my world, my goal is to travel around and really educate people on the idea of risk. So when we talk about risk, and this is the main thing that I always like to talk about, which then I'm sure we can all jump in on this one, is what I talk about is, let's take sports. So if you take a trade in major league sports, again, it could be any sport. Everybody's so fast to make the announcement. It's just like a merger. We won this practice. We got this practice.
Right.
We got this player. We did this. And they always say the same thing. And you don't know, because I guarantee you're going to know the answer, but I always go, the legal is done. The finances are done. This is a major league sport trade. It's pending a what?
Background check.
Or which is part of, right, true,
Yeah.
for some players, yes, definitely. But it's pending a physical.
Yep.
Well, what's a physical?
Yeah.
Is this player worth the risk? Why do we do that at the end?
It's amazing, isn't it?
We spend all this money on legal fees. We spend all this money on accounting and going through the background financially and do the number.
Sure.
So let's do all that and announce it. Let's waste all that money. And then we're going to go, let's see if this person's worth the risk.
Yeah.
Because what happens if they fail the physical?
Sure.
Deal's dead. So the only person who truly can kill a deal is compliance and risk. Not the CF. If a compliance officer says, you can't do this, this is crazy.
But more and more, that's coming to the forefront, right?
It has to be. Debbie, it has to. And that's why the point that I'm trying to get across when I'm traveling is, let's take that risk and put it right in the front.
Sure.
And we've even had deals within our office whereby the deal did not go through because everything looked great, but then when it came to compliance and some of the practices of the practice, for some purchasers, deal was dead.
Deal's dead, and that's, you know, and not to upset some of the M&A groups that are out there. Some love me. You know, you see M&A deals are dead, private equity, the hospital deals. But number one, I've never understood why you can't, and even for a firm like, you know, say, hey, do you have any idea how much time we're gonna save?
Yeah.
And how much money we're gonna go save, because we're gonna be doing all of this at the same time.
Sure.
But that's how the word, this is my opinion, no one else has said it to me, but this is kind of like how the idea of an earnout happened.
Sure.
Right? So you go into an acquisition for anybody who's been acquired or is going to acquire, and they say it's 50 million. And they go, okay, and everybody goes and buys their Ferrari or their Prius, depending on which road you want to go down.
Polar extremes, but yes.
Polar extremes, but they all need gas.
Yes.
So
True
all the
story.
electric car owners out there, you need gas.
Exactly.
Coming from my...
We'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah, my monster machinette's outside. So they go do that, and they say, okay, we're going to go do this. You have to get us all this paperwork so we can do our due diligence. Well, wait a second. I'm sorry. How did you throw me a number before you even looked at a thing?
Right.
Well, that's going to be based on all of these different pieces. So, okay, so 50 million, they come back in 6 weeks or whatever it is, and they go, okay, it's 38 million. Well, wait a second, it was just 50 million. Well, we went and we did our due diligence, and it turns out that some of the things that you have, it's going to be 38 million. But you have 12 partners. So you do the math and you go, well, I'm still going to go. We're this far down the road.
Yeah.
You're committed
Right.
on legal and finance without compliance, and they're still going down the road. And then there comes the best part, is they'll say, okay, so it's 38 million, but we're going to give you 12. Stay with me. And you go, wait, what? How did we go from 38 to 12? Well, you didn't think we were going to give you all the money up front, did you?
Right.
No, we're going to give you an earn-out, because what we found is that there are these 9 things that you don't do that actually we can't finish this thing based off of this. So you're going to stay on for X amount of time.
Sure.
You're going to go and fix all of these things after the fact, not before, because if you'd fixed it before, if a practice had invested the money in compliance, and the joke is compliance is always the smallest number in anybody's line
Sure.
item of,
Definitely.
right?
Sure.
It's always, they go, if you had just done that, you're talking a significant amount of money regardless in an earn-out. And by the way, earn-out in every language means you're not going to get that money. And then all of a sudden so you went from 50 to 38 to 12. And I'll get the rest of it in 3 years if I stay. And you go, well, why did that happen? Well, now everybody's committed. Well, because you went through legal and you went through finance, but you didn't do your compliance check. You didn't, so
what you're saying is maybe it's tactical by the buyer? Is that what you're insinuating?
well, I'm not saying it's
kidding.
not. No. Well, no, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it begs the question.
Of course. I mean, in
Right.
my humble opinion,
Right.
absolutely. It's,
Sure.
Right, and then once the compliance is completed, the new owners now have a well-operated practice that could earn more
Sure.
money.
Try asking anybody, and this is for any of these companies.
Yeah.
Try asking anybody, and you have to have a healthcare or a billing background to get this joke, but go to any of those companies and the new owner and say, so do you remember when 250 was the code for diabetes without the decimal points? And they'll be like, the people that are buying these practices, that's what they do. They buy practices. They're
Right.
not, they don't understand the
Right.
dynamics. They
Sure.
hire.
Sure.
So they're hiring. It's like an insurance company. They get paid to not pay.
Yeah.
I mean, the goal is, it is funny. I'm going to ask you this, Debbie. Have you ever walked into a practice where the initial number ended up being lower than the actual number that they got paid? So we're going to say it's 30 million. We're going to do oh my God, it's 60 million now. Never going to happen.
No.
So is it tactical? So if it always happens, is it?
Yeah.
It might be.
Yeah.
But until I see it in
But
the
it
other
shifts
direction.
the focus, right?
Always.
And that's when you go out and you speak, and even the focus of don't wait until you're receiving letters from
Oh, God, no.
CMS
Yeah.
or Medicaid or Horizon. You should be proactive in
Absolutely.
making certain, right? Even
Yeah.
before you're even considering a transaction, but just to make sure that your operations of your practice is compliant. So when that letter comes,
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
it's not so difficult.
right. And then you're just reacting, not being reactive. I mean,
Yeah.
from one of those things. And that's hopefully something that these practices that are, and especially the practices that are your clients, are leveraging you guys for.
Because we even receive calls sometimes whereby then I have to call you, right? Where they received the letter from Medicare.
Yep.
Now they have a clawback, and now they're not receiving payments on the
Well, they go
services
into a
that they're
prepay. Yeah,
yeah, they go to
provided, right? So now cash flow is at an all-time difficulty,
Right.
right? And
With-
now they're in a funk and they're having a hard time even continuing practicing because they're spending so much time worrying about this letter and all that's
Well,
ensued.
yeah, and I'm sure it's one of the things that you probably do with your clients, or and I think every practice should do, is they look at what their costs are. So when you look at the idea of saying, internal checks and balances and doing audits, and they say, okay, well, what do you spend? If I say to somebody, what do you spend on your printers? And there's someone in the practice that has a spreadsheet
Sure.
Right.
in Excel. Of course, it's got to be in Excel. Of
course.
And it's like, we spend to the time, we have 7 offices, we have 7 different printing contracts. We have you go
It's
through
expensive.
It's expensive,
It
but
is.
you go through all these things, and then all of a
Surprisingly.
sudden you ask this question, which is, So do you do your billing in-house or do you outsource it? And you say, okay, so the groups that say they outsource it, one isn't necessarily better than the other, and one isn't
Right.
worse than the
Right.
other.
Yeah.
And remember, even if I had an opinion, I couldn't say it because that's not what we do. But we say, okay, it's outsourced. Okay, great. Well, what do you pay? Now, in some states, you can't charge a percentage. So the first time when they go, and especially in New York, and they go 6%, I'm like, what shade of orange do you like to wear? Because you can't do that.
Yeah.
The doctor also can't own a part of the billing company.
Yeah.
Let's just go through all the things physicians can't do.
Yeah.
But you say, okay, 6%. I'm just using that for effect. Or the other group, when you go, okay, well, how do you handle your billing? They go, well, we do it in-house. Okay, well, what's your percentage? And they go, what do you mean? What's your percentage? You know what it is for the outsource. For you know what you're paying, a percentage of your revenue. What are you doing it? And most people go, oh, we don't know.
They don't know it, but they make the assumption that it's less expensive.
Yeah.
That is correct. But now that doesn't justify that they should outsource it. But
No.
what it does justify is you don't know what you don't know. How can you go and make a decision on something if you don't know your own house or your own, whatever you want to call it? Go and find out. Say, take everything that you spend and you say, oh, I have 5 doctors. How many billers do you have? 42. And you go, what? But our AR is really good. Yeah, that's great. And so it's one of those things where you need to look at the entire practice because that's when you eventually get acquired or whatever it may be. They're going to look at that towards EBITDA, or as some people like to say, EBITDA.
EBITDA.
I've never understood that one.
EBITDA is everything. Yeah, I don't get it. I'm also I'm confused by the whole dynamic there. So I want to be cognizant of time because if there are those that are listening, and I should tell you,
I'm hoping many people are listening.
Our audience of 32 people, which includes my mom and dad and my brother.
My kids will be on there at some point. Yeah.
They are going to be riveted. No, I'm kidding. I joke, of course, but I want to be cognizant of time.
Sure.
I think that something you said prior to, we may have even started talking about this prior to the recording. It's just the value of common sense in this discussion, right? Like,
oh my God,
it almost seems like this should be common sense, but it isn't, and I think that's where we come in, if I'm being honest, collectively, right? Is that
absolutely?
I like to say that what we do here at SAX is so unique that it can only be done by very few people, but the reality is a lot of it sometimes is just common sense and understanding the big picture. Having said that, what I want to do is we've been talking micro, so I want to take the next 3-4 minutes, right? And we'll wrap at this. I think we gave folks some sense of how you differentiate and what you do and what your value is in the marketplace. But if we were to kind of put a bow on this, just let's forget about compliance for a second. I know that's hard. Take compliance out of the equation.
I got different glasses for that.
So from a non-compliant, just from a general standpoint,
yeah.
What is your perception on the health? Let me use that pun. The health of the health. What is the health of the healthcare industry today and marketplace? Give me a sense of what you think is the big picture, right, and what it's going to look like in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I know that's putting you in.
No. I mean, I talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting because as I said earlier, I usually will tell my own personal story as to how I was, successful or relatively successful person. I got almost bankrupted by the healthcare system, which is why I did what I did, where I had this, I think we all have a false sense of confidence.
That's a fair statement.
So if you look at the evolution of healthcare, right, the old days, it was the old days. You had an insurance card and all of a sudden that became a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Free. Wait, that's not really... Well, why am I getting this bill? So where the big shift is really coming is in this idea of fee for service, right? Which is where we live. So everybody goes fee for service. And I go, okay, here's fee for service in a nutshell. Yep. You go home, you get a thing from whatever your insurance company is, you open it up, and it says on the top, this is not a bill. We've all seen those. Yep. An EOB, an explanation of benefits. That's the world we live in today. Fee for service. I have a PPO, a POS. You go through your insurance. You go say, what do I have? This plan, this deductible. It's a family deductible. You have there's more choices.
Sure.
It should be like a fast food restaurant. It should be like, I'll have a number 4, or number 6. Yep. And there's no change. There's so many pieces. Number one, it's like a gym membership because they're dying for you to make a mistake.
Right.
Everybody makes a mistake. The people who are the best at this make a mistake because that's what they want you to do. You're not the one who's creating it. But as we go more into a risk world, that is where the changes are going to be. Because people always talk about, well, what's the difference between fee-for-service and going at risk? Mm-hmm. And it's really it's just a couple of cents on a management fee. So when the management fee that the insurance companies charge.
Right.
And they go, oh, it's a penny. Yeah, do that 7 billion times a year.
Right.
That penny turns into a lot. So for people like us, we don't know what we don't know. You now have insurance plans that are for catastrophic only.
Right, younger people sometimes take those plans.
Right, absolutely. And you look at the long-term care, home health care, those types of policies that are out there. And I think it was 4 years ago, they went ahead and they just out of nowhere tripled the policy rates for these patients, or these that had these unlimited plans. It was like $300 a day, forever, and they're like, yeah, sure. Well, now we're going to quadruple your cost because you can't have it. We have things that are very common as the three of us sitting in here.
Yeah.
We're all getting older, we're all getting sicker, and we're all scared, and we don't want to burden anybody.
It's true.
Coming from 52 years old, broken neck, and zipper club, triple bypass survivor at 49, out of the blue, and dealt with my own compliance problem. Yeah. The issue is that where healthcare is turning is we are going to have to self-educate ourselves on our own wants and needs more than relying on anybody else telling us, because we're living in a world where there are a lot of agendas.
Yeah.
And it's like we're in a scenario where, and I can only speak for myself, right? So for myself, I went ahead and made a lot of people a lot of money when I was in the healthcare business. And I would work and work. And I still remember the day that I was having my first kid. Oh, I didn't have it. But and I got asked to do a demonstration while I was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Because somebody else had to go make money. And for us, it was one of those things where it was then, now we're in a place where, you know what? We have to worry about ourselves.
Yeah.
So the advice that I would give is you got to read everything. Do not wait.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to take 10 minutes a day to educate themselves on the future of their own healthcare, because nobody else is paying your bills,
right,
except you. And more importantly, trust in advisors. Yeah. Trust in the Debbie Nappis of the world. I mean, and me.
That's fascinating, because Debbie, if you think about back to so long ago, our first podcast, so long ago, but that was sort of a message that came out of that as well.
Right, because Brian talked about value-based care.
Yeah, yeah. Brian Brie, right?
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Brian Kern.
But that's the trend.
Right.
I believe that.
And they've been trying for a few years now, right?
For years. In this side of the world.
CMS had certain dates, right? We're going to have this in place by 2022. Now we're in 2024. I mean, it's taken a long time.
Yeah. I mean,
to converge over.
You're running into that with Medicare Advantage too,
right?
Like when you see all the plans on, they were already in 2026.
Sure.
Right.
So, but the most important thing we can do is all look out for ourselves. I say this to everybody I know from a wrapping up standpoint. The first person you say good morning to and the last person you say good night to is you. So we all have to be kind, because that's super important, especially in today's environment. But we can't expect anyone to give us advice. They're not us.
Right.
Well, now healthcare, you're the consumer, right?
Yes.
So before, like you said, you had your card, and that was carte blanche. Now you really have to call and make certain, are you in the plan? Because otherwise, it's not a bill, but it's a bill.
And we're all
it's a bill.
Oh, it's a bill. Yeah.
Pre-auth. I thought it was pre-authorized. Oh, you have to get pre-certified.
Right. We're all living this all day, every day.
Right? And that's the key, is that we all can't be professional athletes. We all can't be politicians. We all can't be doctors. we are all patients.
Yep.
All of us.
So we have to be the best patients we can be.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, the podcast is obviously not designed for patients. It's designed for other business professionals. However, I think that is something that we as professionals can take to the market and continue that education, because that's going to be the differentiator, right,
Yes,
in the healthcare
and-
marketplace the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And
100%.
as a silly plug, I don't know how.
No, yeah.
I was going to say, I love talking in front of people. So
Yeah.
our website is www. Did I actually just say that?
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, the www.
The www.
What was it? Semicolon backslash.
You don't have to include the HTTPS.
HTTP.
Yeah.
I do. You're such an IT guy.
Hypertext Oh, no, okay. Yeah.
So our website is empowerhcp.com, EMPOWERHCP for healthcare compliance partners.
Perfect.
We have a section on there for events, and people can see where I'm talking and speaking. And but in closing, I certainly want to thank all of you, especially obviously we've done some work together, and you will find that you need to tighten those things up, because
without a doubt,
at the end of the day, they're going to ask you, and they're going to ask somebody else. They're going to ask somebody
without
else.
a doubt.
Right,
So,
they're having the conversations all day.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. So no, thank you. This was great.
No, Mitchell, I appreciate it, and just to put a bow on that statement, I think that we've made it clear for a very long time now. This applies in healthcare, but it applies in virtually every industry that we cater to. There is nothing better than having the right team in support.
Absolutely.
And I think that we can represent part of that team,
Sure.
right? And I think that there's if you're out there, you're listening, you should definitely take advantage of what Mitchell suggested. Check out the website, subscribe to the content. It's worth it, and I think that there's a lot that people can learn from this. So thanks for tuning in to Industry Vitals, the podcast where we really don't talk about anything, but somehow come up with brilliance every time we do this.